Okay, so hi everyone. My name is John Moy, and I'm here to present about viruses. Okay, so defining viruses. So viruses are found in almost all living organisms. A virus isn't technically alive, and yet it produces independently using the mechanisms of a host cell. And viruses are parasitic. The virus was first discovered when a transmissible agent that causes disease in plants. Viruses are found in almost all living organisms. A virus isn't technically alive, and yet it reproduces independently using the mechanisms of the host cell. Viruses are parasitic and use bacterial cells as a host to replicate in the body, causing causing spread every time you speak, sneeze, or breathe. You're actually excreting intact copies of the virus to people around you. Generally, a virus is made up of genetic information, molecules, and a protein layer that protects the molecule content. The virus core is made up of nucleic acids, and the information makes up in the form of either RNA or DNA. The capsid is the protein that surrounds and protects the nucleic acids inside. Viruses prosper and mutate in a specific environment. A virus will only infect very similar types of organisms. Some are beneficial and some are not. Uh, Example would be the human papillomavirus virus, which will infect humans, which will not be beneficial to us. We know viruses are diverse, and some have RNA genomes, some have single-stranded genomes like influenza, while others have double-stranded genomes like smallpox. Basically, viruses are quite small in nano size. So in this picture, um, here are some viruses that are attacking this bacteria, and here's another example of a virus that's spherical shaped. And here's a basic overview of how the viruses enter into like a cell and how they multiply, and then the cycle continues. Um, Continuing on, adding some more information. So the viruses are made up of genetic information, and they have a protein layer. And viruses are very diverse, as you can see from these pictures here. Um, there are many different types with various shapes and even colors. So how viruses are classified? Um, Starting with the tobacco mosaic. So when the first discovery of the virus, tobacco mosaic, scientists began to group the viruses by the variety of size and shape and their chemical composition and structure. Currently, viruses are classified into four groups by shapes. With the use of electronic microscopy, more defined images of the structures were clarified. The virus shapes are based on their characteristics, such as the tail fibers, its helical, the envelope, and whether or not they're non-enveloped. So here's the example of like helical, because it looks like little spirals. This is an example of a complex virus where it has it doesn't really fit into like these two categories of where polyhedral like balls, envelope, like circles and stuff. Yeah. And here's just adding on their characteristics, the tail fibers, which could be tail fibers, helical, envelope, and non-envelope. So here are just some more pictures of like the helical, and this virus has an envelope attached, has an envelope, and here's the like the genetic materials within it. Why we should study viruses? Uh, because of viral diversity, study of molecular and cellular functions. So we study viruses in order to know about viral diversity and help us unlock a deeper understanding of how our Earth ecosystem bodies work, because the virus can cause infectious and lethal disease or have benefits to human health or sustained life. Viruses are important in the study of molecular and cellular functions to help us to understand molecular genetics, such as DNA replication, transcription, RNA processing, protein transport, and immunology. It's essential to study viruses, what they're capable of and not what they're capable of. So here's like the how they in the ecosystem how they affect when through a host and then affects other animals too. And here are my novel stories. So the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918 and human interconnection. So there's a novel story about influenza. The Pale Horse by Catherine A. Porter. The story was related to the author's personal life, who fell ill with influenza and almost died during the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918. It recounts the horror of the deadly pandemic coming in the wake of the First World War. The outbreak was deadly, killing between 500,000 to 675,000 people in the United States. The pandemic affected everyday life and the people struggled to survive. Adults like Miranda in the story were disabled by their illness. Their fever dreams are vividly rendered in the stream of consciousness, making it difficult at first to establish what's real. Porter mentioned the business operation could not go on as it once had. People would die meaninglessly. There are too many dead to be buried and not enough workers to bury them, and mass graves were common. The situation is similar in New York in the beginning of the coronavirus. And then the second story would be Plagues and Peoples by W.H. McNeill in 1976. So the story relates to the human interconnection. When Cortez conquered the Aztec Empire, he brought with him the Western world's smallpox viruses. They unknowingly infected the Aztec people with smallpox disease, and masses of them fallen ill and dying. And people in Americas had fewer antibodies, and this one reason why contact with the Europeans hit them so deadly. When different cultures first came into contact, there were outbreaks. People continued to interact. They built up mutual immunities to each other's diseases. Today we have a similar situation. The CDC warns people to wear masks, stay a safe distance, and avoid crowds. At any crowded situation, is ideally for viruses to jump from person to person. McNeill focuses on the importance and impact of diseases that interface of life and social distance, and also he reconstructs the history and the terrible effects of epidemics which came down on mankind over the past 1,000 years. And here's my references, and thank you.
Chocolate.